Hello, everyone. Welcome to Next by NETRONIC. This is our session 1. I think we're going to give it a bit, maybe 2 minutes more to see who else is coming in, because I see a lot of people in the lobby still. So to begin, let's start with some housekeeping. I would like to make sure that everyone can hear me. If you can, then please write something. You can say hello, where you are. Yeah, okay, great. Good to hear that. Now that my screen is clear, you only see my PowerPoint, right? Just to make sure that for now, we would kindly ask you to mute yourself. If you want to ask something, then we are very happy to hear you. But for that, we can use the chat. Yeah. And then from the chat, we will tell you, we will allow you to speak, let's say. And yeah, but for now, only during the presentation, unmute. For everything, you can always write it. And then we can pin people. So this is an interesting task. If you would like to see the person who's going to speak, in this case, we're going to have as speakers Martin Karlowitsch, which is the CEO of NETRONIC, and James Crowter for TechMan, as well as Sascha. So you can see them on the side. They are listed as the attendees, and then you can just pin them on Teams so you can always see their screen. Now this is up to you. So let's see, for today's agenda, we will start by welcoming everyone, of course. And then we will have a demo on how to achieve, oops, that's a typo there, how to achieve advanced visual scheduling with Business Central. And later on, we will have an expert panel discussion with James Crowter from TechMan and Martin Karlowitsch and Sascha Hermann from NETRONIC. So now, please, Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. I will send you the presenter.
Yeah, thank you, Paulina. Thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everybody, to today's event. I'm quite excited about this. We did a lot of activities in the past with writing blogs that you can read, with doing webinars that you can watch and listen to. We started a podcast that you can listen to, and now we are doing this event where it is actually a lot about communication with each other. So Paulina just said this, we asked you to be all on mute, but of course, we want to have the conversation. So what we want to do is I will give a brief introduction now on how to achieve manufacturing excellence with Visual Advanced Production Scheduling. Then we'll have a panel discussion where we have some questions that we prepared based on the feedback that you guys gave us in advance. And then we have an open discussion round where everybody is welcome to ask a question. And so with this, let me get it going with answering the question. And I need to share my screen, of course. With answering the question, how to achieve advanced visual scheduling with Business Central. This is a very straightforward question, and this straightforward question also has a straightforward answer. And the answer to this question is with the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, VAPS. So what the heck is the VAPS? Well, the VAPS is actually the first finite capacity scheduling extension that fully integrates into Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And if we just look into this short statement a little bit more, and if you also remember that actually the title of this webinar was, or of this event is, that we want to talk about manufacturing excellence and how this is kind of equal to Business Central plus advanced visual scheduling, then this one sentence about the VAPS makes this formula more clear, because it breaks down on what advanced visual scheduling. I'm pretty sure you all know what Business Central is, but now with this little definition of the VAPS, actually advanced visual scheduling becomes a little bit more transparent. And I now roll up the sentence from the end to the beginning. So it says it is full integration. So the VAPS is something that is fully integrated into Business Central. It brings finite capacity scheduling to Business Central, which is one of the few points where Business Central really is not that good at. And in addition to it, it is advanced. So not just with finite capacity scheduling, but with some more aspects, we started to actually enhance and advance Business Central so that it can, together with the VAPS, provide a more comprehensive and a more powerful scheduling experience. And of course, it is not just a scheduling experience that happens within a table or that happens in the back end of Business Central, but it is a scheduling experience that is, like all the other products that we build, very visual. And in my point of view, this kind of formula with Business Central and these elements of an advanced visual scheduling brings a lot of benefits actually to you if you're a manufacturing company who uses Business Central or who wants to use Business Central or who considers upgrading from Dynamics NAV to Business Central and then get this interesting new functionality. But it is also a great value proposition actually for you as a partner if you have manufacturing clients that you now either want to bring from the Vision to Business Central or from another ERP system to Business Central or from no ERP system to Business Central. And it is really the sum of this which enables you to gain manufacturing excellence or which helps you to bring manufacturing excellence to your clients. And of course, it starts with Business Central. Business Central is part of the equation. It's part of the solution. And we at NETRONIC, we are an ISV to Business Central, so we are completely independent of Microsoft, but still, I feel Business Central alone brings a lot of benefits for manufacturing companies. It is a powerful Microsoft platform and technology. It integrates with all the other Microsoft products. It integrates with Office. You can literally run a lot of financial and business processes from Outlook or from the integration with Outlook and Office and then in the background Business Central. So this is very, very powerful. As this is a Microsoft product and not a product that comes from any other vendor, it is not sold directly by the giant technology vendor, but it is sold and brought to you by very knowledgeable local partners. So you can get it from your trusted IT partner that is just around the corner. It is nothing that you get from a remote and distant software giant who is that is somewhere far away from you guys. And then we have the manufacturing module in Business Central. And the manufacturing module in Business Central in itself is powerful. It has a lot of more functions and functionalities than many other ERPs. And so it comes with production orders, with routings, with bill of materials, machine work centers. There is MRP. You can post, and there are a lot of powerful hidden options. So this alone has a lot of value for you and for your clients without all the other stuff that we now add and that are marked in blue. And of course, it is much more granular, although this is the much bigger thing here. And to me, the one of the biggest things of the VAPS is its full integration, because actually with a fully integrated scheduling product, there is no reinvention of wheels. We just build on what is here. We don't try to rebuild routings. We don't try to rebuild MRP, and we don't try to rebuild any of the others. We just build on what is there, and there is no double work. And this no double work is also no fight for having the best concept. And this sounds trivial, but actually I have seen customers who kind of ran into a six-digit financial disaster because of this. Because if you attach, let's say, an a big advanced planning and scheduling system from the outside to Business Central that was not built on Business Central, then you have the Business Central philosophy on the one hand, and you have the APS philosophy on the other hand. And then your Business Central partner in Microsoft tells you this is how it should be. And then most likely the APS vendor tells it, hey, but it is that way how it should be. And if this does not integrate, then you have two systems. And these two systems, they are built on different assumptions. And then you fight for having the best concepts. And then in the end, you spend a six-digit figure on an APS system. But in the end, nobody uses it because they continue to use this. So I have seen systems that are very expensive, but they kind of ignore core elements of Business Central. And then you had the APS system on the other hand, and it produced a schedule. And then you had MRP in the ERP system. It produced a different result, and people did not trust the different results. And this then also leads, if the systems are not integrated, it leads to double data management. You have to maintain master data here, master data there. You have to sometimes do double data entries. And so all of this does not happen if you say, hey, this is actually the platform we want to build on, and this is this platform that we accept as the dominant system. So the VAPS is scheduling built on a really rock solid fundament. And again, there are a lot of more benefits for customers. Then what we do is we bring finite capacity scheduling to Business Central, and finite capacity scheduling, or the lack of finite capacity scheduling, is actually one of the weaknesses of the manufacturing model in Business Central. And finite capacity scheduling makes sure that you never overload your machine centers, which translates into you get a realistic schedule. You might get actually a schedule when you look at it with the VAPS that you do not like, because you might see a lot of things red because they are late. But even if you don't like it, this is still realistic. So planning with finite capacities and finite capacities tends to give a more realistic schedule than just a more or less erratic schedule based on the assumption of infinite capacities. And if you work with a finite capacity scheduling software, something happens that many people don't think of, but it still happens. And this is whenever you do a change to the schedule, may it be by a right mouse click context menu thing, may it be by pressing a button, may it be by drag and drop. These kind of actions always trigger an automatic rescheduling of the schedule. So whatever change you make to the schedule, you directly get the impact of this change, and you keep having a realistic and current schedule. And of course, because it is visually with the VAPS, you also see this. Then the VAPS brings some enhancements and advancements to Business Central. So with the VAPS, you can build production scheduled simulation. So you can build various scenarios of your schedule. You can define alternative machine centers, including production coefficient. We take into account material availability when you schedule. You can pin operations, and there are some scheduling tools that help you to achieve either scheduling effectiveness or scheduling efficiency. And then, of course, last but not least, and this is true for all the NETRONIC products, it is visual. This means it hopefully, and we are working on getting better on this with every version we do, it is easy to understand. You can look at it and you see some dependencies, you see some issues, and then you can take action. And with being visual, we really believe it is super important to put the user into the driver's seat, not the system. We don't believe in some magic happening behind the scenes, but we believe in user making a decision and then let some magic maybe happen, but then understand the magic that happened and why it happened and how it happened and what it resulted, and then again let the user deal with the result. But we kind of try to build infrastructure and solutions that keep the user in the driver's seat, because if we achieve this, then ultimately users have a higher trust in the schedule and this increases the likelihood that they actually work with the schedule. And then there are a lot of course, if it's visual, it gives us a lot of options to make things stand out, to work with color schemes, to work with visual call to actions. These are all the nice benefits that you automatically get when you build something visual. And to me, actually, the formula for manufacturing excellence is business central as the rock solid fundament plus visual advanced production scheduling. And visual advanced production scheduler boils down into something that is fully integrated, that brings finite capacity scheduling, that closes some of the gaps that exist here, and that makes it all visual. And with this, actually, I would like to have a quick look at what this product is and how it looks and feels. And let me switch to Business Central. And you see, I'm still working on a bit outdated version. So I'm working on Business Central 14. So I have to refresh my screen from time to time. And this is just because I was too lazy to update. The VAPS works with Business Central 14, 15, and 16, and you can get it from AppSource. So I have a list of released production orders here, and the use case may be that a customer called and he has some urgent requirement that I should ship him 44 units of a front hub by a certain date. And because this is an urgent request, I say I want to look at this in red when I see this in the VAPS. So let's see how I can switch in, put in this production order into my schedule. And scheduling with the VAPS always starts from what we call the simulations area, because we can keep multiple simulations within the VAPS so that we actually can, let's say, for the sake of scheduling, disconnect the live production data and the schedule. We don't want the schedule to happen on the live production data. We want to have the frozen schedule, the work orders list for the shop floor. They should be stable. Then the scheduler should schedule or build simulations, make scenarios, make his dream schedule, continue his dream of a schedule, and then do some proper scheduling without impacting what the workers do. And only when the scheduler, when the person running the schedule thinks that he has a new version of the schedule, then publish it and then update all the work order list. So it always starts with simulations, and I did a few before the webinar, and I tried to make some funny names. So now I create actually a new simulation, and maybe this is the next simulation during this event. I can filter on the status of production orders to include. I can define a time frame, and I say, hey, I want to see this by production order, because remember, I have this red production order. And then I can look at my schedule in a visual way. And this is what some of you are familiar with. We have a time scale in which I can zoom in and zoom out. We have work center groups and work centers and machine centers here on the left. And we have my operations here. And you see this urgent production order shines through in red, because on the production order card, which I get from double clicking here, I say, hey, this should be in red. So now you see something that might surprise you, because this is something which is not in standard Business Central. I said this is the work center group, this is the work center, these are the machine centers. And then in every work center, we have something that we call the standby resource. This is something that we automatically add to the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler. And the standby resource is the machine center, the virtual machine center that kind of shows me all those production orders that I am, as the planner, have to work on. So these are the production orders that are not yet scheduled by me, that came through Business Central, like me just creating this new production order, whereas everything that I see on cutting 1, 2, 3, on drilling 1, 2, and so on, this has been scheduled by me before and published. So everything on standby are these are the production orders I need to take care of. And now I have a couple of options to get this into the schedule. I can, of course, drag and drop this. But like in other Netronic products that you are familiar with, drag and drop means triggering a finite capacity scheduling. So with drag and drop, I literally tell the software, I want this to start here. So if I say, hey, actually, I want to start working on this here on this Monday morning, then we see the length of this operation, of this activity, is actually longer than the time gap that I have. Nevertheless, I can tell the system, hey, I want this to start here. But with this, I'm making a priority decision because now I said, hey, this one is more important than the black one, than the green one, than the gray one, and so on and so forth. So they all got pushed out, which you can see by the little gray dot on here. But not only these got pushed out, but we see a gray dot here. So I squeezed in this one here, and that one got pushed out. And it got pushed out, although no operation of this production order actually runs on drilling 1 where I made the change, but it got pushed out because this one on milling 2 got pushed out, because this green one got pushed out, because this got pushed out. So drag and drop in a finite capacity scheduling environment is something that is quite powerful, quite complex. And my recommendation is that you do this, but that you only do this if you want to really make a conscious prioritization decision. Otherwise, we have tools that help you to effectively schedule. So you can say, hey, you know, I did some effort in Business Center and I defined a routing. So why can't I add this to my schedule and just apply the routing? So add this to the schedule and find the earliest place in the schedule from my standard routing. So now I assigned this to the schedule and we looked in the defined routing for the first available spot on the respective machine centers. And we didn't disturb the rest of the schedule, but unfortunately, because we have quite a good workload here on those machines, we miss the required due date. So we need to tell the customer, hey, look, we are very busy. We can't do this in time. But what I said is that with the VAPS, and I undo this with the VAPS, we can also define alternative machine centers. So when we closely look at the routing, then we see that we not only have my standard machine centers here, but I also have alternatives. So I not only can give this to drilling machine 1, but I can also give this to drilling machine 2. And I have alternatives here on every operation. So I did invest into building new master data so that I have defined alternatives for all my routing steps. And this is a new function from the VAPS. And then I can say, hey, add this to the schedule and look for the fastest way to get this done by making use of all the allowed alternatives. And then you see we find a free spot at drilling 2, we can go to milling 1, and we get the same production order through the shop much faster by just making use of the standard or of the alternative production order routing steps that we defined. And there is actually a lot more to the VAPS, but I think for the first introduction, this is what I wanted to show you right now. And with this, back to you, Paulina.
Thank you, Martin. Oops. Thank you, Martin. Oh, my bad. There we go. So now today, we're going to pass on to the expert panel discussion, where we also will have James Crowter and Sascha Hermann. This will be with the help of Lawin, who's also a business developer like me, and you can reach out to them for a couple of countries. So then how about we come to you, Lawin?
Hi. Hello, everyone. So today, as Paulina mentioned, we're here for a panel discussion. And I'd like to start off the panel discussion first by obviously welcoming everyone. And maybe some of you have worked with me, so it's nice. I see some people from Singapore here, so I'm very happy that you made it despite this difference in time zone. But yeah, first I'd like to start off to get things started. I want to ask James some questions. So as Martin mentioned, right, the VAPS, this is the only finite capacity scheduler that's fully integrated with Business Central, and we know this because we've experienced it. But we see a lot of interest um, from customers to actually start off their journey of with the ERP system with a scheduler or already being used. But we also see a lot of pushback. We see a lot of customers who are very in love with their current system, which most of the time, from my experiences, is Excel. And actually, they keep going back to Excel. And yeah, maybe James, you could tell us, why do you think people go back to Excel, and maybe why would you not recommend going back to Excel? Yeah.
Well, I think they use Excel because it's a tool they know, right? And I'm not sure about the going back bit either. I think a lot of them have never got off Excel as a small business has grown. But the problem is Excel is a single person tool, and it really requires an expert. When you put information into Excel, you can build the most complex formulas, but somebody has to understand where that information feeds and how it's arrived at that number. And the problem over time is that, again, they tend to tweak it over time and try and improve it. And eventually it comes up with numbers that nobody understands and nobody trusts. And the other aspect is scale. That one person becomes very critical to the business. So you have a vacation, or just at the moment, if you have, that person has an illness, something like COVID, and they're off for 3 weeks. Where does that leave that business if that scheduler isn't capable of doing their job? So Excel is a good financial forecasting tool. It's not a production planning tool. They're only using it because they don't know of a better alternative. Something built into Business Central is that better alternative, and BAPS is, I'm a firm convert. I remember the first discussion with Martin about what we could build, and I think we've got a heck of a long way towards building it.
Cool. So yeah, thank you, James, for your answer. I think that's a good insight into what actually businesses experience, and yeah, obviously we have some alternatives now, and today is a chance for some of the customers who were in this meeting to actually hear from us about these alternatives. So Martin already started with the VAPS, but now we want to hear from Sascha Hermann, who is our CTO at NETRONIC. So Sascha is actually in charge of developing the VAPS together with James. And what I want to know is how actually has the experience been in terms of your technological challenges in developing a fully integrated scheduler for Business Central?
Okay, so the challenging things developing visual schedulers is, it starts with the visualization part. So first of all, if you want to develop this for Business Central, you need something which is capable of working inside of the web client. So to have something like this, you need to have it based on somehow HTML, JavaScript, and being able to be run and visualized inside of a web browser, I would say. So our former extensions or add-ins we had for NAV were all based on .NET. This is not possible with the web client, so we had to create something new. So one thing would be that we get something from the market, but as we're we have certain requirements and prerequisites, and especially with the production planning, we are working on the basis of, I would say, seconds rather than typically doing it in a project planning in a per day basis. So we looked around, but it was pretty clear that we need something more precise, and then was ourself and to create something have a visualization based on HTML and JavaScript. So we have a product for this on its own. So this is also available. And for our ad or for our extensions, we now literally eat our own dog food and make use of this visualization based on HTML JavaScript and make use of this in our Business Central extensions. So this was the first challenge, I would say, to have really a capable visualization component to work with for such kind of schedulers. So the second challenge is to work with such full screen planning boards inside of Business Central, because Business Central is not really intended to have something besides Business Central. So it wants you have small control add-ins there, but to have some full screen planning board is kind of challenging to have pages where you can put these on. So the next thing would be the fully integration. So, and fully integration in our understanding is that we are, not connecting externally via web services or something like this, but we are really first-class members of the BC ecosystem. So our planning boards or our visualization is built as a so-called control add-in. So this is an element of Business Central itself, and you can put this control add-in on Business Central pages. So we are all making use of all the standard Business Central elements you have. So we are working with standard pages, putting menus on these. We are using normal dialogues from Business Central. We have the menus, we use notifications, and when we use all of these standard things, you can make use of the personalization, for example, of Business Central out of the box as well. And you don't have any hassle regarding authentication, for example, because all the users which log into their Business Central system are also directly logged in or can make use of the visual scheduling extensions. So this is all one system out of the box. So the next challenge is, and this is most of the people don't really see this in the first glance, when you're looking at a schedule, you're combining data from really multiple tables in one view. So for the production scheduling, you're looking at work centers, at machine centers, at the calendar entries for these capacities, and you're looking at production orders, production order lines, routing lines, etc. So when you look at one page, you literally look at 10 tables with all the data inside of these tables, more or less. So the challenge is here the amount of data and then the performance working with this data, even on a system which is, in this case, Business Central, which is quite young in the technology-wise, where they changed now how they work with tables and extensions, etc. So, and if you combine all of these things, you just have a viewer and not a scheduler yet. So, and the scheduler needs to change data. And then this is also a difference, as Martin said, we work with somewhat called like simulations, where you don't work live on the data in Business Central. So this is different to Business Central, because in Business Central, when you typically enter something on a card page or in a list or somewhere else, you are directly editing this data and it's immediately saved. So in contrast to our extensions, we always work on temporary data and make changes there. And only when the planner says, okay, I'm fine with this schedule, we are saving back. And then the challenge is to really save data back into the back end, which might get out of sync in the meantime when you have the schedule open. So, and working with all of these stuff, these are the challenges, I would say, you have when you're working with or when you want to build a visual scheduler. Yep.
Thank you, Sascha, for the very comprehensive explanation and of your experience. It's a very insightful, I guess, also for all the participants today. So let's get back to you, James. So we did a quick survey from the from the participants beforehand, and we really wanted to know what has been their experience in terms of the whole migration that's happening now from NAV to BC. And we found out, interestingly enough, that 80% of the participants already mentioned that they have migrated at least 50% of their customers to BC. So when we compare finite capacity scheduling between NAV and BC, obviously we have to talk about Planner 1, obviously, and of course the VAPS now, past, before and the after, past and the present. Yeah, obviously you guys were a reseller of Planner 1, and you've had a lot of success implementing Planner 1 in the UK. And now you're contributing to the development of the VAPS. So if we look at both products, we kind of compare both. Maybe you could share with us what are some of the functionalities you miss from Planner 1, and maybe what are the functionalities on the other hand that you see that you like from the VAPS that you're now developing.
So yeah, I mean, Planner 1 was as a manufacturing specialist business partner here in the UK. Planner 1 had become a standard part of our toolkit, and most of our manufacturing batch manufacturing customers were looking at some sort of visual scheduler, hopefully integrated into NAV. NAV on its own isn't actually very easy to keep up to date, and I would argue that the majority of organisations that don't have anything on top of NAV/BC actually don't do the schedule at all. They just say what they're going to make and make it, and don't worry about the timings at all. So Planner 1 was an important component, and so with its demise, with the news that it wouldn't go past NAV 2018, we needed an alternative, and that was part of the reach out to Martin to say, look, you have something that looks very good, but we need to add some capability to it to be able to match. There's not a lot left. I mean, Planner 1 was a different product, I think, because it was a third-party scheduler that was really bolted on top of NAV. It wasn't so tightly integrated. The fact that it took a couple of days at least generally to install is something I certainly don't miss. And kind of my mouth dropped open slightly when I went into AppSource recently and plugged it in from AppSource, and 5 minutes later it was there. That's kind of wow, that was just a big wow moment. So I think we have the advantage with apps that we're on a modern code base. P1 was really very much more a traditional product in terms of a lot of cal modifications, a lot of things like bringing the adaptability around colors and tooltips and information, alternative routings. But that was again an important thing on our list. But again, when we sat down with Sascha and Martin to plan how we did alternative routings, actually we had a lot of Planner 1 customers who loved alternative routings in the demo, but never actually implemented it because it took too long and it was too complex to set up. So we were able to use that experience to go back and say, how do we do this in a simple, quick way that people can actually use? And that's one instance I'd call out with saying that Martin's already showed. Those alternative routings, you can set them up so quickly. It's a single code on the routing line, and then it's just there and it guides you. And it will adapt the times if one machine's not quite as fast as the other. But you don't have to set up masses of routings against every product. You can really do that once and then use that across the piece. So we found that much more customers are willing to invest the time in doing that because they see the benefit, whereas as the P1 route of doing the same thing took just too long and just too much. So I think I think the other thing is I would say is we have a term in the UK about blowing smoke. That's overly complimenting people. It's not something us Brits are used to doing. But the visualization, what Sascha said, that control add-in took some work to create. Having watched some of those head scratching moments, I can vouch for that. It was hard work. but it's beautiful and it's simple. And you know, we're finding that the training process for people with apps is so much shorter, because actually they're looking at it and they're going, oh, look, it tells me what that red line is, because it tells you just next to it that it's the expected date, etc. The dots. You know, just every time I come back to it, they've added another little subtlety, which is just obvious to use, and you go, that's really nice. That really helps me to stop perhaps navigating out of the scheduler, looking at something and then going back into it again. You can really stay there and start to do what you need, and apply what you need. So I think what I would say is, I think in terms of usability, we have far surpassed Planner 1 at all, already in the first release. I think there is, in terms of some of the kind of optimized scheduling, there's clearly some way to go. You know, again, that's probably my fault, not Sascha and Martin's, because when I sat down with them and we discussed what the scope was, I was very clear that actually it was a relatively small proportion of our customers who trusted automatic scheduling. They did what Martin called out in the first few slides, which is they want to be in control. They actually like things going into standby and then them knowing what they've planned and what they haven't, rather than just the system coming up with a plan and they go, well, I wonder how that happened. So we find that, you know, yes, they want to know what their finite capacity is, but they also want to be in control of it. And as long as we can give them that in a very fast, efficient way of doing it, where they don't have to spend hours collecting information and then further hours, you know, planning, and they're almost, by the time they finish that cycle, it's out of date and they need to start again. I think this is that utopia of efficiency, speed, simplicity that's really going to make a difference to, and is making a difference in the sites that we've already implemented.
Thanks, James. So to kind of summarize what James said, basically it's the VAPS is simple, it's sexy, usability is good, and yeah, it puts you still remain in control. Just to kind of follow up to that previous question, also from the same survey that we asked the participants today, we asked them what their biggest scheduling hurdle was, and we actually found out that the most common answer is that when you have some machine failures, rush orders, unforeseen events, how do you move things around? How do you make changes? How does actually Business Central help you solve these challenges? And where does the VAPS come in?
So, you know, everything's needed at pace these days. It's ironic we're talking about scheduling, because the one thing that people don't have is time. You know, the people who are doing the scheduling don't have time. Arguably, they should schedule themselves, but you need to have answers really, really quickly. And you know, if it's too much effort, if it takes too long, they tend to take shortcuts and they just don't do it, and they don't use whole sections of functionality of Business Central, I would argue. You know, that's where what I earlier contended, which is actually that you'll see dates and times on production orders and they'll bear no relevance to when they're actually going to do them, because it's just allocated the next date and time on, but they've then shuffled in it and they're doing them in almost a manual order that they don't tell the system about. And that's a real shame then, because the other people are on that system, people in sales and so on, when they want to know when something's coming, they have to pick up the phone, and that rush order as well. They can't, it's not a complete system. So you start getting fragmentation, you start getting Excel sheets again back, you know, where a chase list of these are the priority orders, etc. You can brew that. You could change a color on that production order to red, see what the priorities are, see what that rush job is. You've got a single integrated system that's connected end to end. And that for me is really important. Actually, as a Business Central partner, that's what I'm selling. And my proposition to potential customers is so much weaker if there's a whole chunk of their business that's missing from that. So, you know, and when it's as important as the production planning, production area, they really want that whole loop of knowing, right, when could we have this? I can make that promise while I'm on the phone with confidence because I can get through that. I can see we can do it. We can get it done. And probably the final thing I'd say is that, you know, the scheduling job is getting harder because the whole kind of move to more agile process, batches are getting typically smaller, not larger. So, you know, production lines aren't doing 1 or 2. The whole personalization trend that you're seeing of stuff being made to order because it's so custom to what that particular customer means is that they're scheduling 60 orders a day rather than 6. And so that makes the scheduling process much more complex, if you like, and more to keep on top of. You can't just maintain it in your head like the schedulers of old used to, where they had 3 jobs that going through in a week. Thank you.
Right, thanks. Thank you, James. Again, now let's go back to Sascha. So as you might have noticed in the slide that Paulina was presenting, Sascha is Sascha developed the famous VPS. So he came up with this around 7 years ago. And now he's also overseeing, as I mentioned, the development of the VAPS. So how has the experience been in developing production schedulers for just one ERP system? So now on NAV and now on Business Central, and maybe you could share some of the behind the scenes or under the hood between the VPS and the VAPS now.
Okay, so first of all, to get a planning or a planning board or a scheduler get to life, I would say, you need the architecture I explained before. So you need all these kinds of things. You need the visualization part, you need the architecture and the framework to handle all the data. You need the integration, you need the logic to work with intermediate temporary data and afterwards synchronize this with the backend. So these are all challenges you have when you're building a scheduler on its own. So, but the complexity and the special thing regarding production, I would say is, and the main difference between the VPS and the VAPS as well is the scheduling. So when it comes to scheduling operations in the production area, it's kind of different than in the project or service area, because in the production you're scheduling against the availability, against the capacities and the efficiencies of all your work and machine centers. You have dependencies between production order lines. You have reservations. You have parallel and serial routings, and all of this on the basis of seconds, I would say, or in the latest Business Central version, already on milliseconds. So not sure who's using this, but this is the basis you're planning on. So this is the calculation of all of these things. This is the complexity you have with the production schedulers. So, and the differences is that on the VPS, we always try to let NAV on our Business Central calculate our operations. So in this case, the backend calculates these operations, then we cancel these changes and then use the results. So we misused NAV or Business Central for all the calculation stuff. So in contrast to this, we built the VAPS with its own advanced scheduler. So this one is independent from NAV. So it is it's working with finite capacities. So, and it takes into account the material availability and the concept of the alternate routing sets Martin already showed. So this is something which is different and which you need to handle and which creates complexity when you're working with production schedulers, I would say. The things we have in common with the VPS and the VAPS is that both use the same visualization core. As I mentioned, this is a product from our own as well. So We use these in all our products. So, and the main architecture of the extension itself. So how we make use of tables, how we maintain data inside of these, etc. So, and we are working on the same standard Business Central tables. So we are loading the typical tables we use in a production area, like work centers, machine centers, calendar entries, production orders, lines, routing lines, capacity needs, etc. But on top of this, the VAPS uses additional tables we have built on our own to extend the scheduling experience. As I said, regarding material availability, the routing sets, and the multiple simulations. So we have multiple simulations where we have all the schedules saved, persistent in the database as well, and you can switch between the simulations, and when you're fine with one of them, then you can commit these and synchronize these back into the backend system. Yeah, right. So quite some complexity.
Thank you, Sascha. Just to kind of go deeper into the conversation of the similarities and differences between the VPS and the VAPS. Now let's hear from Martin regarding what actually do the typical VAPS customer look like. What does a typical VPS customer look like? Because this is actually a very common question that we get from our partners or interested customers.
It's hard to say in a black and white manner, and it's even harder to say this in a short manner. But I want to try to keep this short because I actually see that we are running a little bit out of time with the panel discussion and have a good list of questions from the visitors. So I try to keep this short. No worries. My demo overran, so I tried to keep this short, and then we can go back actually to the questions that we already see from the participants. So what is the typical VAPS customer and what is the typical VPS customer? I think it depends a little bit actually on where organizations stand in terms of scheduling. So, and there the differentiation between VPS and VAPS is customers need to look at it like walk before you run. We talked a lot about customers that today maybe are in the early phase of their digitization journey, and they run their whole company plus the scheduling based on Excel. And then when I observed a lot of those companies that then started to decide for a production scheduling software, and they came up with a huge list of requirements that kind of would be for a full-blown APS system or for an MES system or whatever. So for a huge system. And to me, this kind of step is way too big, and this overwhelms people. And so I would phrase it like this: the VPS is the product to walk, and the VAPS is the product to run. So if you're new to scheduling and if you're new to ERP, then start with the VPS. And here is the example why. With the VPS, when you introduce Business Central and work with the VPS not only makes your schedule visual, but it also makes the manufacturing module visual. And with having a visual manufacturing model in Business Central, you most likely will be able to understand manufacturing faster. And this alone is a big benefit. And then with learning ERP, with learning scheduling, you could work with the product like the VPS that you 100% understand, that 100% ties in with the standard, and then you recognize about the gaps, and then you build some scheduling fitness, and then you can run, and then you can switch something to the VAPS. The other thing is, if you worked with scheduling software before, you have some scheduling fitness, and then you can go for the VAPS. And then, of course, as always, or as often, size matters also. So the VPS is meant for a lot of smaller customers, whereas the VAPS is for the larger customers with a higher number of jobs per day with a higher volatility. So I would say, yeah, the typical VPS customer is the customer at the beginning of the digitization journey. The smaller one, the one with controllable number of jobs, maybe also with on average longer operations, and the typical VAPS customers are customers with solid scheduling experience with a high volatility in their jobs, with the need to quickly and frequently change, and with a lot of number of jobs per day. And maybe with this, we can just look what questions we got from the people participate. And Paulina, you're on mute. Paulina, you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The one that we should address first is a bit more general, because is what experience and suggestion do you have for those who have mixed scenarios of manufacturing and projects? So whoever wants to answer.
James, what about you?
So, you know, I think we have customers who are scheduling against resources and etc. around the jobs area of Business Central. But I think that, you know, VAPS clearly focuses on the production orders. We've done some per tenant customizations that have created production orders specifically from jobs to push production type processes into VAPS. I think trying to combine the two, you know, is a difficult and it's impossible to be. Well, I'm not saying it's impossible. I shouldn't say that maybe, but it's very difficult to be truly good at both. Production is generally in a factory. You know, when you get into projects, you get into things like geography and travel and lots of other areas that introduce some different complexity to the ones we're looking at production. So for me, you know, I think it's different. They're actually similar processes maybe, but actually delivered from very different data and with very different rule sets around them. And so that's appropriate to have two different products to do the two different jobs.
I agreed, definitely. So now another question is there a maximum number of production orders per day that can be displayed in the VAPS? Or would there be an average of production orders that works well with the VAPS?
Well, I would say I can build the technical part. So technically, you can put a lot of production orders per day into this, but the question is if you can really work with this from a visualization point of view. So we can visualize this, but if you have that much production orders, I'm not sure what number you have in mind. Maybe you can write this in the chat, Rosin. How much you have in mind you want to schedule per day. But as James said, the times change. You have low volume production orders, more or less, and therefore more production orders per day. It depends on how much you want to schedule. But technically, I would say we can handle a big number.
Okay.
So
good to hear.
Let me add one thing to it.
Yeah.
So right now, as the product is as you saw it when I presented it, I would say, although maybe, and Sascha, I take your word that we have technical no limitations. There are some limitations today, or almost no. There are limitations in terms of handling it, because as you see or you saw today, we need to treat every production order by its own. So we need to individually get every production order to the schedule. And then I can imagine this is doable if you have 10 to, let's say, 30 production orders per day. But if this gets more, then this is still doable, but it becomes more painful. And if I would be a planner, I definitely at some point of time would kind of object against it, because then it becomes a repetitive task. The good thing with repetitive tasks is that you can build software to do these tasks for you. And this is actually something that we do now. So we built the concept for it that allows us to effectively add multiple production orders to the schedule from standby by following some, let's say, prioritization rules that we are building. And we specified this, and we are now literally, as we speak, beginning the development on this. So then I said right now, I would say it is something between 10 and 30 production orders a day that makes sense to handle based on how the product is built. Then we definitively will increase this number with the functionality we are building now. So the main limitation remains that and this is also what Sascha referred to, is in the end the cognition. So what can you see in a visual schedule if there are zillions of data? So in the end, I would say we need to figure it out with you or your client what the best figure is.
We have the number actually now. Rosen was saying about 40 per day, but now you already said it that it's about 10 to 30, but we're gonna get there.
Yeah,
I'll add to that, because we've seen this problem, which is one of the reasons why we've taken it back to Martin. And actually we were looking at between 300 and 350 production orders per day, which is a little bit higher number. I would say 40 is doable. I mean, one of the things he didn't show was scrolling in and out. I love the fact that you can just widen the timeline. So your customer might need a larger monitor. You need a lot of screen real estate. The more you get, the better. 40, I would say, is on the 40 to 50. I would say is on the limit of where you can go right now. But we're going to improve that. So because I need it, apart from you, Roseanne. So please, that's on the roadmap.
Next versions. So then another question was, how does the VAPS handles the VOM or the materials? I would say the material availability, if that's where we're going with this question.
Yeah, if this is compared to what we had in the VPS before, so we don't have we have a BOM view, but we are using the BOM information for the material availability, I would say. Right, Martin?
Yeah, so in the VAPS, we don't have a visual representation of the bill of material, but what we have, and this is pretty new and unique, and this is something that I did not show in the demo, is the capability to actually take account material availability for scheduling. So behind the scenes, we calculate something that we call the EMAT, the earliest material availability date, where we make a sophisticated calculation and compare day by day component demand and component supply. And if there is enough supply to meet the demand, we allocate component supply to the component demand and set a date on which we can do this. And with this, if we do this for all production order component line, we get the availability dates for every component, and then we can go through those and take the latest one and say this is actually the date when all components for this production order are available. And then we can take this to account into scheduling, which today is purely visual. So we show this date in the schedule, and we also have a color scheme where I can see which production orders I have scheduled before the availability date. But when I spoke about this, let's say, mass scheduling functionalities that I spoke before, then we also make sure that we take into account the earliest material availability date information, because now we have it, and then we can say, okay, I want to add this list of production orders to the schedule by that priority rules without violating the earliest material availability date. So then this is being taken care of. But a visualization of a bill of material is not yet, or is not part of the product, and also nothing on the short to midterm roadmap, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, we have two more questions. One is a bit more into Business Central. It's not into the visual part of it, but we have another one regarding the priorities of the production orders. And it says, can you define priorities on a production order to sequence them automatically?
Okay, who wants to take that?
Well, that would be
so
to schedule successors, I would say.
I think in terms of, I mean, priorities are clearly going to be important when we come into that group scheduling function. But in terms of there at the moment, it's you could define colours, you can give visual indicators about priorities. But unless we've added something that I'm not aware of, we're not actually kind of formally using that to help recommend the sequence yet. I think I'm right in sliding in, Martin. But I think that priority and where that's driven from is one of the questions as well, because what defines, is it when you have, for instance, a remake, something's been scrapped and you have to start it again, does that automatically get a higher priority? That question for me can go quite deep back into Business Central about and who's allowed to set priorities. So I think we've got some discussions to have around how we introduce that functionality and then bring that through to make it believable. And that's one of the important points, is that if you introduce a capability and then people see the results and don't trust the results, they generally stop using it and ignore it. So this is the absolute kind of laser focus on usability, to say this has to be really good and people have to really like it, believe it, want to use it, and therefore we'll get the higher uptake.
And I think there are actually two elements to prioritization. The one is, if we have a list of production orders that we need to add to the schedule, then it must be clear in which sequence we add them to the schedule. This is the one thing that we now start to work on. And the other thing is, then once everything is, let's say, on the schedule, can we do a resequencing on one machine? So can we kind of reshuffle the operations on one machine? And this is something that we already started to discuss, and where we have ideas how to do this, but not yet finalized. This is something that we call the setup, the sequence dependent setup times, because it just can make sense then to rearrange operations on one machine and reprioritize the queue of the operations on one machine to reduce setup times and to reduce changeover times. And this type of prioritization of single operations on one machine center, this is definitely something we have high on our radar screen. This is, I think, nothing that we work on right now, but that we have to work on rather soon, because it's a most commonly requested functionality.
Then I believe that was the last question. But if anyone else has another one, then we can check it. If not, then I think we're done for today, for the session 1. Let's see.
Well, there's one question.
So. Oh, yeah. New one. Does the VPS and the VAPS integrate with other manufacturing solutions besides Business Central? That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Even I can answer it. No. Let's see. We have another one. Is it possible to adapt a manufacturing module to use the? To use it to manage projects, and therefore to use the VAPS with it?
I'll take that one. I mean, you could do anything if you do enough work, right? But there's whether it's the right thing to do. I think if you have to decide what you're doing. Are you doing a project? Is it projects and manufacturing are two very different things, and I think using manufacturing to manage projects isn't the right thing to do. To use projects to do manufacturing is also not the right thing to do. So I wish Microsoft would do better connections between them. Absolutely. And that's what we've done, is try and make more logical connections between them, but use the right tool for the job is probably my recommendation.
Thanks.
There's one more question.
Yes, 2 more. Is there a time frame planned for to deliver the resequencing? That's a commitment.
I think we all want it as quickly as possible. I'll speak as a NETRONIC customer as well as a co-development kind of partner. There's a whole list of things on the wish list that we'd all love to have tomorrow, but getting them right as well. NETRONIC working with them, there's a commitment to quality, there's a quick commitment to testing, etc. That means that we've got software that we can confidently go out there and recommend to clients to rely on, and that sometimes takes a little bit of time. So I think watch this space, watch the notifications, because I'm going to be disappointed if something doesn't land in my inbox regularly. I think that's the point. It's probably more than waiting and having a big long list together. It's got kind of regular increments in it, and every time I look at VAPs, I have to refresh what I think I know, because they've added some new visualization or some new control or some new capability. It is progressing rapidly. That's the advantage of having SaaS capability, right? It's that's what software needs to do these days.
Thank you. Then one more is, if you drag and drop 2 operations together, one after another, and these 2 operations are using the same tools, do you apply twice setup time?
Well, currently every operation has its own setup time and it's planned for its own individually. So we don't combine setup times or apply setup times twice. So at this time, the setup time is twice because the setup time is per operation, and these operations are planned one after the other, and therefore, in this case, the second setup time would be too much. So.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is what Martin was talking about sequence dependent setup times.
Yes.
There's a number of ways, a number of reasons for driving that. Tooling is one, attributes is another. So if you're doing the same color, in food, if you're going from the classic example I always use is nuts to non-nuts, you have to do a much more thorough cleanup than if you're going from non-nuts to nuts. And so, there's lots of different scenarios that we need to try and think through and make sure that we code in a product for any way this, or a majority of ways this might be used. Anyway is probably a bit of a wider scope. But I think, that's something that, as Martin says, is very highly on the radar and was always from day one. That's one of the things that was in Planner 1 that we did use and we want to use with apps. So watch this space.
So I believe, let's see, we don't have any more questions.
Well, Diego asked another question for the project module, because I think he thought we talk about the VJS today. Just sorry to focus on production today. So this is the broke session then, but so we don't have a advanced job scheduler yet. So what you're talking about would probably be something for the future for an advanced job scheduler. The current project module has no finite capacity, which is scheduled automatically. So, but I think you're the first on top of the page if we start with the VA.js, and we get in contact you too then.
They're partners. So, therefore, I think it will come up to this. Thank you very much for joining. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. You can email us if you have already the contact, and otherwise we're going to receive an email after this to say thanks for being here. But yeah, if you have any questions or if you would like to discuss any other topic, then you're very welcome to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Paulina. And I just want to re-endorse this. We did this as a first interactive session. We called it session 1. So this could mean that this is the only session we do, but it could be a session 2, session 3, and session 4. So if you like this, then please give us some feedback. And if you want us to repeat this with another topic, then you're welcome to suggest a topic, and then we'll do. So thank you, and stay safe and healthy, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Juan, you can send us a message.
Yep.
You can send me the message.
Pleasure.
So,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.